Bismillah. So before the exam, we had started Azure Data Services. और इसके अंदर we were trying to see and understand कि क्या data stack है, what are the different services and what do they do. And as a background, we defined the different types of data, structured, unstructured, semi-structured. We also looked at the roles of people, right? Which is the database administrator, database engineer, and database analyst, and what they might be using, what they might be doing, what their job responsibilities might be, right? At a high level. Uh, Generally, it's not restricted to that. You will go across different areas. A database administrator will be dealing with, for example, it's very critical for a data engineer to understand the database admin roles and responsibilities as well, and be able to do those things by himself as well or herself, right? It's very critical. And then you need to understand, we need to understand ये हमारे जो different data stores हैं, Azure SQL, Azure database for open source, right? ये मैंने बताया था कि these are PaaS services given to you by Microsoft. They're open source databases. So instead of you setting up a virtual machine, they have given you these things. For example, if you're using MySQL, you don't have to set up a virtual machine to set up the database. So for example, I can go and say create a resource, and I can say, for example, MySQL. And I can go and create flexible servers. So it talks about, you can see that by default, right, by default, Microsoft allows you to create an PaaS service with MySQL that gives you zone redundancy, right, performance, and IOPS, right, and the various different things, right. So for example, let's do this one. और कुछ scenarios हैं, for example, where they ask you or give you something that people use quite a bit. For example, WordPress and MySQL. So what they do is they create a WordPress on app service. They deploy WordPress on app service, right? And connects it to Azure database on MySQL, right? So everything is a PaaS service. So it gives you a very nice way to get started very quickly with WordPress deployed in MySQL as a PaaS service, right? So it's really, really nice. So you can see there quick create and advanced create. I'll just go through advanced create and don't want to go too much into the details of that. So for example, let me see, fast, so yes, right? And I can say, for example, CS4037 MySQL 01. MySQL UAEN 01. Okay. And actually, इसमें वर्जन भी पिक कर सकते हो. There's only one version available as a PaaS service. पुराने versions they have retired. And you can have different kind of things, right, in the workload type. And you can see यहाँ पे आपको B1 MS. It's a very cheap kind of virtual machine. So development or hobby projects. You can see tier 1. It gives you a proper nice virtual machine, which is E2. And if you remember from virtual machine, this one is specifically which has double the RAM from standard, right? If you recall that thing, that B series, E series, D series, and those kind of things, right? This is what we call a memory optimized. It has double the RAM, double the ratio of RAM. One core with 8 gig RAM. Okay, if you recall that conversation. Just 1 second. Yeah. And then you have smaller, this one again you can see that this is a normal standard VM, which is 1 core to 4 gig RAM ratio, right? So 2 cores and 8 gig RAM. So business critical, you have double the RAM, storage, and various different things, right? So nothing special. Just to understand, they're just giving you underneath a different compute option. That's all it is, right? And this is the same philosophy is everywhere, right? So we'll pick, let's say for this one, okay? We'll pick this one. And we don't want anything in a availability zone. We are fine. And you can also do high availability, right? You can do this one as well. I don't need to. For example, what will happen is in the same zone, they will have another standby server. So this is what happens, for example, जो आपको खुद करना पड़ता है usually, but here they're taking care of all of these options for you in behind the scenes, right? And I can do in the same zone a standby server. Okay, I can do the same thing in the same zone. You can do in the zone redundancy as well, and of course your cost will go up. Okay, I will say, for example, admin name. For example, we can say CS admin, and ये मैं extended रखता हूँ इसके ऊपर pass at word 1. Sorry. So now what they're saying is that this is our estimated cost, okay? And storage is costing this one, compute is costing this one, right? It is giving us 2 virtual machines, it seems like 2 times 75.92, right? So about $200 cost for this one. Or of course, इसके अंदर we have certain discounts and various different things as well. Don't need to go into the costing and all that, but anyway, let's go next thing, which is networking, and we can do private access. Right now I will do what I will do is I'll let it do public access, okay? Otherwise private access we can deploy it on the virtual network directly, okay? It checks कि मेरे क्या networks हैं, क्या virtual networks हैं. So anytime you will see private access, generally it means it's going to deploy this on your own virtual network, okay? And this is what we do usually. Okay, this is what is done. Let's do private access actually, right? So it picked this one, for example. You can pick, so we'll do this one. Let's see what else is there. We'll do this one. Okay. और उसने कहा कि इसके अंदर मैं आपको बना के दूंगा. I will use this one, one of the, let's just do this one, okay? And it's saying something, it's giving you some information. No need to go into this one. It says this subnet will be delegated for use with this one. No need to worry about this one. This is more advanced configuration. It does this by itself. We have not covered it. Again, it's an advanced topic. We'll discuss this one maybe if time permits. But main thing is right now is कि हमने इसको कहा कि इस नेटवर्क के ऊपर, इस VNet के ऊपर और इस सबनेट के अंदर इसको डिप्लॉय करो, राइट? Generally we create a brand new subnet जिसके अंदर हम इसको डाल देंगे, ठीक है? Generally we do this. Maybe it's a subnet for DB. It might be, for example, मैंने अभी dev किया हुआ है SNet DB and I will deploy all the databases over there, right? Generally you would do something like that. But anyway, ये development के लिए हमने बनाया था subnet. We'll put this one over there. We can do the private DNS this one as well. Okay, it's fine. We'll let it go. Continue. Security. ये identity मैंने आपको बताया था. I don't want to go into the identity again. ये मैंने explain किया था class में. But anyway, leave it for right now. Let's see अगर key हमारे पास है कुछ. Yes, cancel. I will create a new key vault. So what I will do is is going into topics which I don't want to touch right now. Okay, I'll just do the quick create. Let's just do that one. Okay, ये खुद ये सारी चीज़ें बना देगा basically behind the scenes, all these options. So I will focus on just the database basically. So we'll do this one, MySQL UAEN 01. Right. No preference, no preference. We'll say CS admin. Workload type, we discussed this one already. For connection, I will not leave. No need. So this is a nice part, it'll take care of everything by itself, okay? I think this will not allow you to put it on a VNet. And I think that's the difference. But anyway, we are fine right now, okay? Just want to show you. So इसमें जो important चीज़ we have to understand, this is a PaaS service. As you can see, behind the scenes, Microsoft configures everything for you. Azure configures everything for you. आपको कुछ करने की ज़रूरत नहीं होती है. आपको high availability, zone redundancy in a single data center you can do. Anyway, it takes care of all possible configurations. For MySQL, gives you everything in a very nice way and configures the service for you. This is the beauty of these database services for open source. ये सारे जो open source databases हैं, Microsoft provides you as a service, right? At a very nice cost. आपको सिर्फ basically you're paying for the compute and a little bit above for the services. That's about it, and the storage, right? But I think there's nothing for software license at all, right? Because it's already open source. Just creating this one. It'll take some time. Okay, let's continue. So this was Azure database for open source. Okay, so they're giving you very similar service as they're providing you for their own database, which is a SQL Server. Okay, they're providing you very similar experience from the management perspective, from the installation perspective, and everything. And this is what generally people use now. They don't go and set it up themselves. Okay? Then comes Cosmos DB. In Cosmos DB, this is what we discussed. It supports the 4 non-relational types, right? The graph database, document database, and table storage, and family databases, right? It supports all of them. It also supports like the other open source non-relational databases. It supports their APIs as well. So it can behave just like those databases. Okay. And then for something very cheap and all that, right? You have Azure storage, which provides you rows and columns, right? And you can use that as a simple table store if you need that. और उसमें if it's not supporting the required scalability and required features, you can always go above to Cosmos DB, or you can go to any other database, right? If this is not sufficient for you, but you can get started with this one. लेकिन इसके अंदर एक और चीज़ that you have to worry about is you are using table specific APIs, so that require application change generally, right? If you move to anything else. But anyway, when we design these things, we know the limitations, and we use these things specifically, right, where it meets our purpose. We don't think from the perspective कि कल को मुझे change करना पड़ जाएगा. If we know we're going to need to scale it, we put the appropriate solution so we can scale the solution, not change it. Okay, so this is an important design thing to understand. So ये data storage है, right? Or of course, we are not talking about everything. There are third-party databases you can use that you need to set up yourself. For example, Oracle, IBM, and Informatica for data warehousing, and various different things, right? Everything is is a fair and standard thing, right? To use as a data store. But these are something that are native to Azure. This is what we are discussing, right? Then we come to next part is after data source, then engineering and analytics, right? We are starting from here. So understand what you're mapping this into, right? So we looked at the databases and what administration you have to do for the various different databases, right? And the setup and the various different things, right? Now from the engineer and analyst. So this is the stack we are looking at basically, right? तो सबसे पहले उसके अंदर the important चीज़ is Azure Data Factory. This is the standard and enterprise level ETL tool. Extract, transform, and load, or vice versa, right? Extract, load, or and transform, whatever you want to do it. So this one is ready. I'll go to the resource group. Let's see what happened over here, right? So this is the database server actually. Let me see if this is the database server. Yeah. And when you go through AZ104 certification, you will understand all these things that it created. ये सारी चीज़ें जो उसने बनाई है ना, ये वाली. For example, DNS zones, traffic manager. We discussed traffic manager in detail in class some time back. Availability set to make it highly available. It has create availability set. If you remember, मैंने आपको इसकी limitation बताई थी कि you cannot add VM later on, right? So to help with the possibility of making it highly available, इसने already उसको availability set में डाला हुआ है, right? It created this automatically, right? तो कल को अगर हमने एक और इसके अंदर नोट बनानी हो डेटाबेस की for high availability, it can add it over here as well, right? And here's the actual database, and it detected basically that you're using the MySQL and all that. इनका वो भी है, YouTube channel भी है, and I can put the link over here as well, right? Azure database from MySQL. Sorry. Right, this is just for you guys. Okay. So ये group app, the product group है, is Azure SQL from Azure database from MySQL का. They have put their own recordings, right? So it's a very good stuff that they've done that you can go over this and read about it, right? So let's continue back on this one, right? So now how do you get started? You need to connect any one of your admin tools, right? So it talks about connection, and yes, I will do this one. But generally, अब ये इसका server name है. You can basically use the admin tool from MySQL and connect to it. Let me see if अगर इन्होंने भी कुछ दिया हुआ है हमें यहाँ पर to connect to it and do anything with it. No, you need the tools, right? तो जिस तरह SQL Server का है, SQL Server का tool है SSMS, SQL Server Management Studio to manage. इसी तरह इसका भी tool है MySQL का. We can take a look actually quickly. MySQL Workbench, right? This is the Workbench is the tool actually. And you can download this one. Yeah, MySQL Workbench. So this is just to show you what is possible, right? And what we can do. ये अपने tools जो आप use कर रहे हैं हमेशा से, you can continue doing that, right? And you can connect to. So nothing special Microsoft is doing. They're giving it to you as a PaaS service. That's it, right? And then you can connect. Okay, Oracle. I think Oracle bought MySQL, so I think that's what has happened. So we'll see. We'll let it continue. So I just want to show you in connection also in the meantime. Now we come to look at Azure Data Factory. This is the ETL tool. Okay, I will let it finish as well. So now we go over here. Go to Azure. यहाँ पे I can say ADF, okay, Azure Data Factory. Let me state data factories, okay. We'll create a data factory. This is the ETL tool. Okay. Resource group will continue with the same one that we're using. I can say, for example, fast ADF, or I can do ADF fast 01, right? And I can do again UAE North. V2 is fine. We'll do this one later. Networking, that's fine. That's fine, no need to worry about these details. So I'm creating an ADF. I just want to show you how it works, right, at a high level. And then you say create. So ADF is that pipeline ETL tool or ELT tool that you can pick data from anywhere, move it anywhere. Okay, this is the idea of Azure Data Factory. And modify it, update it, fix it, whatever you want to do. This is ADF is used for. Very, very sophisticated tool, completely browser based. Okay. Then we come to, for example, Azure Synapse Analytics. This is for end-to-end analytics and data warehousing basically. Data warehousing is used for analytics, right? And it has the concept of pipelines, which is very similar to the what Azure Data Factory is, data pipelines. It has its own type. Then it has complete SQL-based workloads. You can use Apache Spark. It has Data Explorer, which is used to query petabytes of data, very, very large amount of data at a very, very high speed, basically, right? So this is the end-to-end, basically, analytics suite, right? You bring data from everywhere, maybe using ADF, using its own pipelines, and from all different places into a central place where you can do massive amount of analysis, right? You can have huge amount of compute on this one. And it has extreme high scalability, right, for those kind of things. Then also, if you can look at it, it has one of the component that is built in or integrated deeply in this one is Apache Spark. And Apache Spark is essentially the backbone of Azure Databricks as well. So if you want to use Azure Databricks, a third-party offering which is based on Apache Spark only, you can do this one. This is one of the fastest growing companies. It is basically Apache Spark. The 5 original designers and people who started Apache Spark made this Azure Databricks. So essentially, it's some services built on top of Apache Spark, and they provide to you only as a cloud service. This is not a downloadable thing on your PC you can do. Okay, and just to show you, ये हम इसको इस तरह बनाते हैं. For example, let me just show you data factories also. What data factory looks like. ये इसका data factory का there is a studio. It gives you a very nice surface to work on, right? So it has a lot of libraries to load and all those things, right, behind the scenes that make the surface work, that design surface work on this one, right? For the first time, it takes a little bit of time. इसकी बहुत ज़्यादा JavaScript libraries हैं, backend very different, lot of different things too, so it works nicely, right, in a browser-based environment, browser-based solution. So you can see code-free data pipelines, copies data at scale, schedule it, transform data, many different things, right? So I will do a new pipeline. And it has some stuff already. There are a lot of activities, copy data, right? And data sets allow you to create connections to, for example, data and many different things, right? So copy data, I can drag and drop, right? It tells you what the source is. Okay, I'll select a source, data source, and you can see it says who do you want to connect to, right? Anything and everything. Google BigQuery, Google Ads, file system, Dynamics, FTP server. It can pick from anywhere, right? Any kind of file and from anywhere, right? You can imagine the amount of work that has gone into to build these connectors, right? Third-party systems, built-in integration with Salesforce, anything that you can think of, right? It is built in. SAP, different SAP systems, SAP business warehouse systems, right? Anything that you can think of. Oracle's various different systems, right? Everything is there. And then you can, this is the filtering, right? Services which are available on Azure from this all is everything, right? Then Azure, all services available on Azure, different databases available on any platform, from file, FTP, Amazon storage, Google Cloud Storage, SFTP, which is secure FTP, right? Generic protocol over HTTP or DPC, whatever, right? NoSQL, these are the NoSQL databases, MongoDB, MongoDB Atlas, Cassandra, those kind of things, right? Web services, these are all web services, base integration, right? And all these things, right? So by default, this is all the R&D that has been done into making this one of the most sophisticated tools, right? That allow you to pick and manipulate data from anywhere to anywhere. Your sources and these the same things can be the destinations as well. You can put the data from here as over here. You can pick from anywhere and put it anywhere, right? That's the idea. तो यहाँ पे आप सेट करते हो इसकी प्रॉपर्टीज जो ये आई हैव डन ड्रैग एंड ड्रॉप यू सेट द सोर्स यू सेट द सिंक राइट एंड देन यू कैन डू मैपिंग वो मैपिंग देखता है क्या डेटा आ रहा है वहाँ से व्हाट डू यू वांट टू डू हाउ डू यू वांट टू मैप इट टू फॉर एग्जांपल when you are being exported to sync and all those things, right? You can do many different things, right? आप इसको parallel कर सकते हो how you want to have a when you're copying or doing whatever, if you want to have parallelism, logging and various different things, right? Retries, अगर आपने retry करना है, retry interval and many different things, right? So very sophisticated tool, and you can have debug. You can just debug this thing, and then you can attach, right? And then you can see various different things, right? You can attach notebooks, and I mean, and there are endless possibilities over here. Or I've seen it develop this tool and getting enhanced over time, and just keep on adding these things, which is the actual power of cloud, right? That they don't have to wait for the release of software. They can just keep on giving you more and more services, right? So really amazing stuff over here. Okay? I think they've added some more preview experience that tells you, new features and various different things. They do these kind of things as well to you. They add new features and they say, okay, you can preview these features if you want to, right? They might not be completely stable, but you can use them. But so you can do these kind of things as well, right? You can do auto save. क्योंकि आप वो कर रहे हो उसके ऊपर, you can do the Git integration as well. Anyway, I don't want to go into the right now in this thing. But you can see it gives you newer experience and all those things. Let's go back. So it's a very, very nice, amazing tool, amazing service basically, right? Um, Azure HD Insight, we don't use it anymore. It's not used too much. Databricks came up. HD Insight was essentially, let me see, yeah, HD Insight is basically based on Hadoop, Apache Hadoop. But we don't use it too much. Our core, core R&D budget is going primarily into Synapse, which has a new name actually now. It's called Azure Fabric. And of course, third party are doing very, very well in the Azure Databricks. So Apache Hadoop, which is the base of HD Insight, is not used too much generally. I personally have not seen anyone using. I think in USA and some in Europe, people who've been using Hadoop on premises, they're still using, right? They might not have migrated. Also, एक और सिनेरियो जो है इसके अंदर इन स्पेशली डेटा सर्विसेज इज व्हेन यू आर हैविंग रियल टाइम डेटा इंजेक्शन, राइट? रियल टाइम डेटा इंजेक्शन के अंदर फॉर एग्जांपल यू हैव सिनेरियोज वेयर फॉर एग्जांपल आपके पास आईओटी डेटा आ रहा है, राइट? कंटिन्यूस नॉन स्टॉप ह्यूज अमाउंट ऑफ डेटा, उसके लिए देन यू यूज स्ट्रीम एनालिटिक्स, राइट? कि आप रियल टाइम डेटा आ रहा है एंड विद मिनिमल डिलेज, राइट, यू आर एबल टू एनालाइज इट कि what pattern it looks like, what is going on, any anomalies and all those things, right? You need very, very sophisticated engine for this, and this is what stream analytics do, right? Real-time data processing, and generally हमारी field के अंदर this is generally from IoT kind of things, right? Where आपके कई हजार sensors are sending data from all over the world, all over different places, where and you are analyzing in a central location, right? Sorry. Then you have Microsoft Purview. This is for data governance, right? Data governance के अंदर generally what they want to do is right, क्या इसकी क्या entities हैं, where it is coming from, इसकी क्या confidentiality level है, is it for example it is let me see what is the best way to put it, is it confidential, क्या उसका वो है public data है, and all those kind of things, right? You can map those things and you can say what are the sources, and there are various different things, right? At enterprise level, you have complete map of all your data in a central location. This is the idea. Then you can have different kind of policies, what can go to which system and what not, right? And it can make sure that data doesn't get based on different government regulations, based on policies and all that. उसके बाद last but not least, right, is Microsoft Power BI. Power BI is the Microsoft enterprise reporting tool, right? So if you're going to, for example, powerbi.com, right? You can have reports, you can connect to all these data sources that we talked about, right? All this stuff you can connect, and then you can have visual visualization of all this data. Let me check if I have any reports. I'll show you. You can have very, very sophisticated reports. It's a very, very big area for from the job perspective as well, right? Power BI, reporting, developing reports, developing interactive reports in Power BI. It's a very, very nice thing to learn. Whole world is using this thing, right? So just to show you, for example, these are some of our internal, I think, dashboards created using Power BI. And this is the new name. Everything is under Microsoft Fabric. So this is the F is the Fabric icon now. It is coming over here. That is based on Microsoft Fabric. I'll just take one more. Sometimes initially when you're starting up reports, in the end is HTTP based, right? HTTPS based. So it takes a bit of time to download the required libraries and everything, because जो interactivity दिखाते हैं इन चीज़ों के अंदर, it requires a lot of very sophisticated JavaScript and various different frameworks, right? So it's loading up the reports, it's loading the sample data. And this is what they have done, right? You can see all this stuff is built using Power BI. Okay. ये सारे everything is native to Power BI. ये सारी जो visualization scheme है over a map, all these things, ये data सारा का सारा इसके ऊपर वो visualize हुआ हुआ है, ठीक है? And on top of these things, you can let me just see. Yeah, you can see it gives you data for all different things as well, right? Wherever you point, it has all this stuff as well on top of it, right? So this is all the different capabilities of Power BI, right? And you can see there are different tabs. You can export. I think it has PowerPoint, PDF. You can do these things, right? These are built-in capabilities of our Power BI. So very, very nice tool, right? All this stuff is developed in Power BI. Okay. ये पीछे आपका data है basically that is picked up using queries, different data sources, and based on that you have done this one. ये arrows, numbers, percentage, its icons, all these things, the way it is laid out, this is all done in Power BI, right? So very, very nice and sophisticated tool for these things. It's a really great if you want to go into this area and learn this one, right? They're very nice material online. They're very nice, so if you are in data analytics, this is one of your key areas to do this one, right? You can do subscribe to the various reports and everything as well. So this is just one big report, right? So it is showing you all different things, right? You can control these things from over here, for example, right? ये देखो मैं यहाँ से pick कर रहा हूँ, report is changing basically, right? Whole report is changing. And you can control all the different filters and all that and updates the report. ये सारी report बनाई हुई as a sample report. They're showing you what are the possibilities, right? Simple tables, complex tables, and graphs, and all sort of things, right? So this is Power BI. Okay, so you can analyze data, you can have interactive data visualization, slice, dice, whatever you want to do. Okay. So let's do small Q&A. So which one of the following tasks response database administrator, right? So over here, this one is, it's basically seems like it's one, right? Because this one is for data analyst, and this one is for data engineer. Which role? This is again ETL, ADF. For ETL process, this is again data engineer. Which single service allows you to do all of this stuff, right? Data pipelines, SQL Analytics, and Spark. All of this is Synapse. Okay. Let's see, does it correct? Now again we'll do a little bit of refresh of our previous stuff that you should know already. But again, what are relational tables? So हमारे पास tables होते हैं. Tables के अंदर rows and columns हैं. All rows have same columns, right? Each row, all rows have same columns, right? और हर column की their specific data type, right? This is what their databases are, relational tables are. Normalization क्या होती है? कि हम each entity, or entity is essentially in a real world situation or our business, in our business context, right? An entity or an object that we are dealing with, right? This is what it defines. So यहाँ पे sales data है, every row है, customer, product, order. So these are different entities, right? So उनकी जिसके अंदर हम ये store कर रहे हैं. तो उसके discrete, they're well defined specific attributes, right? जो हर attribute को हम उसे column में डाल रहे हैं. और then we have the primary and foreign keys, right? For defining a unique key for that thing, for that entity, and then using that as a foreign key to link that record, right? That's the idea of primary key and foreign keys. Be very clear on this one from the conceptual points, right? Why we create tables, what are the rules or thought process in creating a table, right? and something could have a lot of different attributes. We don't store every attribute. That's why it says discrete attributes, right? हम करते हैं जो हमें ज़रूरत है जिसकी, right? यहाँ पे the intent is not to go into SQL. The intent is to show the categorization of SQL, right? And we should know this stuff, right? That what kind of record is this? What kind of SQL statement is this? Is this a DDL, DCL, or DML, right? ये जो SQL के standards हैं, these are things which are that define that thing, right? Data definition language, इसके अंदर ये वाली commands आती हैं, create, alter, drop, rename. You're creating a table, how you're defining the data essentially in the database, right? How you're controlling the data is the DCL. आप किसी को rights दे रहे हो, for example, user 1 है, उसको आप rights दे रहे हो on the product table to select, insert and update. Only these 3 rights. You can control all of this stuff, right? You can give control to update only, right? So it's very critical, right, that we understand these things, what are the possibilities and what we can do, right? Ye design ke andar, it's not that you remember everything, but you should know what are the possibilities, right? Kal ko design karo and you should have in mind ki yaar, I can control this stuff. Somebody says that I don't want them to be able to see this data. Okay, you don't need to give them select permissions, right? You can give them insert, update maybe, but not select permissions, right? And so on and so forth. You can have someone only modify existing data, not insert anything new. Don't give them insert permissions, okay? So anything that controls what permissions somebody has and what someone is allowed to do or not, that is DCL. Done through DCL in SQL. Again, it's nothing special, it's just the categorization of SQL commands. And of course, to modify data, and modification means anything to do with insert, update, delete, and select, right? That is the data manipulation language. SQL commands that allow you to do that. They are categorized under DML, okay? This is defining the data, this is granting permission on the data, and this is modification of the data, right? Yes, notes के अंदर there are more details as well. उसके बाद, when you have these things, then the database vendors give you certain objects. Database give you certain objects that help you work with the database in a very efficient manner, right? इसके अंदर views होते हैं, which are essentially SQL query जब आपकी जाती है, आप जब SQL query write करते हो, it needs to get it needs to be compiled, checked and all that, right? So when you write views, it is already compiled, it is already checked, object is already there, you just execute it, okay? So for example, मैं view बना रहा हूँ deliveries, which is select, order number, order date, all this stuff between these 2 tables, right? So what happens is, all I need to do is select asterisk from deliveries, and it will execute this statement which is already checked, compiled and everything, right? So it gives you speed, right? So SQL doesn't need to go through some of those checks before it executes this, right? And also, nobody needs to know who is using the database, and especially the data analyst, right, how to pick the data. You just give them views that does complex manipulation and joining of data. So the business analysts, they don't need to go down into the database to write these kind of queries. You give them views, and this is generally what happens, right? They will come to you and say, I need this stored procedure or this view that can do this, right? And sometimes they don't have the details of the whole data model. क्या आपके क्या tables हैं, क्या relationships and all. But you know, as a database admin, as a database developer, as a data, for example, engineer, you know the ins and out of all of that, right? Maybe you have put together everything. So you can give them a nice view that gives them exactly what they need. instead of worrying about the joining and understanding the table structure. Then you have, Mhm, mhm. हाँ, नहीं नहीं, वो ये कह रहा है कि जब आप, क्योंकि आप जब करोगे ना सिलेक्ट एस्ट्रिक फ्रॉम डिलीवरीज, राइट, आप व्यू को किस तरह एग्जीक्यूट करोगे? यू विल डू you will do select from this thing from the view, right? Select asterisk from deliveries, but deliveries is not a table, right? It's a view, so it acts as a virtual table. कि हम समझ रहे हैं, जो यूजर समझ रहे हैं, it is a table, कि data is coming from a table, but no, it's acting as a virtual table where it will just pull the query and show him all the rows and columns, right? So that's the idea of virtual table, right? It's acting as one when it feels to the users as if it's a table, but it's not a table, it's a virtual table, right? It's a क्या कहते हैं, that's what it means, virtual table, right? It's not कि कोई वहाँ पे database के अंदर कोई temporary चीज बन रही है. There's something called temporary tables. That it's not a table, right? It's basically acting or being perceived as a table, a view, right? That's what it means basically. A query, क्योंकि बेस वैसे क्वेरी लिखोगे. हम्म, क्या कह रहे हो? हमें क्वेरी नहीं राइट करनी पड़ रही, क्योंकि आपने जब राइट करना है ना, आपने टेबल्स को यूज करना है, राइट? अब ये क्वेरी जो है, ये सिलेक्ट क्वेरी लिखिए टू गेट दिस डेटा, राइट? आई रोट दिस थिंग, ये इन दोनों टेबल्स में से इट्स गिविंग मी दिस इज द एंड रिजल्ट, राइट? डिलीवरीज इज द एंड रिजल्ट, ट्रू? व्हेन यू हैव दिस थिंग, तो मैं अगर कहूँ सेलेक्ट एस्ट्रिक फ्रॉम डिलीवरीज, आई विल गेट दिस थिंग डायरेक्टली, ठीक है? So when you're doing something again and again, especially in the reporting, so what you do is you write that as a view, ताकि आपको बार बार ना लिखनी पड़े. आपने एक दफ़ा क्वेरी लिख ली है, एंड अभी तो सिंपल है ये, इट कैन बी वेरी वेरी कॉम्प्लेक्स, राइट? उसका फ़ायदा ये होता है कि इट्स कंपाइल्ड स्टेटमेंट, it's checked statement, so it's faster, and you can do database does caching also on these things, so you get lot of benefits from the performance perspective, right? When you write views and stored procedures. So always whenever you're doing anything multiple times, always think about writing a view or a stored procedure to do that, right? Very rarely we write complex queries which are frequent as regular queries, right? Every time they need to get compiled and executed, right? So यहाँ पे we get lots and lots of benefits on these things. Okay? So think of कि मेरे यहाँ पे 4-5 tables हैं, मैं ला रहा हूँ, in the end I'm getting this result. So next time I will just do this, right? ये इसको मैं use करना, मैं कहूँगा select asterisk from deliveries. ये मेरी query होगी to the database, right? Automatically it will check कि ये object कहाँ पे, is this a table object or a view object? तो क्योंकि उसने select जब asterisk करना है, उसने object देखने कहाँ पे है ये, तो table object के अंदर नजर नहीं आएगा उसको, ये उसके मिलेगा in a view, right? These are all database objects, tables, store procs, views and all that, right? तो वहां से जाके उसको एग्जीक्यूट कर देगा क्वेरी को उसके ऊपर, व्यू के ऊपर. तो व्यू इज एक्टिंग एज अ वर्चुअल टेबल. तो नीचे से कॉम्प्लेक्स क्वेरी एग्जीक्यूट करके आई विल गेट दिस डेटा, राइट? सो इमेजिन यहाँ पे मेरी कॉम्प्लेक्स क्वेरी है, एंड समटाइम्स यू विल हैव अ फुल पेज ऑफ क्वेरी, राइट? इतनी कॉम्प्लेक्स लॉजिक होती है, एंड व्हाट यू विल गेट इज ऑल यू डू इज आप ये कर दो, राइट? So it makes your life very very easy and gives you a lot of performance advantage also when you're using views. ठीक है? So this is what it means that deliveries is acting as a virtual table. Right? So imagine आपकी सारी query जो है ना, it will become like this. Right? This is what will happen. This is the beauty of views. और imagine जब आप कोडिंग कर रहे हो तो जब आप applications when you're developing applications you don't want to write this stuff in your application, right? This kind of stuff, select all these queries and join queries and all that in the code, right? You don't want to do that. You want to abstract this into the database ताकि कल को आप आराम से इसके ऊपर आप एक नेटिव विंडोज एप्लीकेशन भी डाल लो, आप मोबाइल एप्लीकेशन भी डाल लो, आपकी जो सारी बिजनेस लॉजिक है इज सिटिंग इन टू द डेटाबेस in the best possible way. So any kind of application you are doing, it can use it, right? और उसके और भी there are different ways जिसमें आप services layer लिख लेते हो and you talk from all these services to the services layer. But the idea is this thing is not sitting in the application, and developer is not required to write all this stuff in their application and understand the data structures, right? The table structure and database structures, right? This is the idea of this thing. Sorry. And then you have stored procedures, right? You can do updates, modify, do whatever, right? And database जो होते हैं इनको हम ये this is how you execute the stored procedure. ये stored procs है. So SQL statements very similar to what we have done before, but now you have updates and various different things as well. I believe there are updatable views as well now. We don't usually do updates on the views. उसके अंदर कोई limitations हैं, but I think you can do updatable views as well. But in store proc, you can do whatever you want to do. Okay, anything, and then you can simply execute the store procedure. You can pass parameters. You can do filtering, do whatever you want to do over here, right? And updates and do deletes and whatever, right? So again, एक चीज जब बिजनेस लॉजिक आप कर रहे हो, फॉर एग्जांपल this is a very common thing to do in a stored procedure, right? To do, for example, money transfer from one account to another one, जिसमें store proc के अंदर आप पूरी transaction on करते हो, आप दोनों commands SQL commands करते हो, and you make sure both commit or they're rolled back, right? You will do that in a stored procedures, जिसके अंदर you will control the whole transaction. You will not do from your program, web application or wherever, right? You want to be as close to the data as possible to make sure you can do it as quickly and as safely as possible, right? तो आप ये transactions जो हैं, you do that in the stored procedures, right? And generally आपकी जो भी complex logic होती है, business logic, you can put them, especially relating to the databases, right? You put that in the stored procs, right? Stored procedures. इसका एक और short नाम is, for example, stored procs, right? This is generally you will see these things, right? जिस तरह transaction log का भी मैंने बताया था, एक ये नाम इस्तेमाल होता है, और जिस तरह database की मैंने आपको बताया था, एक और मैंने यूज किया था transaction log, T logs, okay? ये शॉर्टकट इंडस्ट्री के अंदर ये नाम इस्तेमाल होते हैं, ठीक है? तो फॉर एग्जांपल उसने ये एग्जीक्यूट किया स्टोर प्रोसीजर रीनेम प्रोडक्ट, राइट, 201, और इसका जी नाम जो है इसका ये वाला नाम रख दो, तो उसने अपडेट कर दिए रो बेसिकली, राइट? रेंच था नाम तुम्हारा, उसका अब उसका नाम स्पैनर रख दिया. एंड देन देयर इंडेक्सेस, राइट? इंडेक्सेस बेसिकली इज, मैंने बताया था, इट्स डन यूजिंग ट्री स्ट्रक्चर्स और बी ट्रीज, राइट? And nothing special, right? Nothing special. It's just the quickest possible way to look up that data, and that data has a link to its row. Let's say it is whatever these IDs are, and even they're integers. You don't have to do sequential lookup. Tree के अंदर क्या होगा? It will divide all these things, right? and you can have multiple leaves as well. So it is the quickest way to look up. So imagine you're not going sequentially, you're going through very quickly in a tree leaf, find out where the record is, and it has a link directly to the row. Because underneath is all data structures, so it has a pointer to the actual record as well, right? So you can get the record very, very quickly, right? So this brings all your knowledge of programming and everything back into this one, right? And you appreciate what level of effort goes into developing and creating this speed, right, from these data structures. How critical these data structures are to be able to help you get to the right data as quickly as possible, right? So, which of the following statements are correct of a relational database? Columns, no. Row interface, single row. No, this one, right? Row in a table represent a single instance of an entity. Yes, अगर customer है, उसके अंदर जो हर row है, उसकी primary key होगी, और every row represents a customer, right? A single instance of that entity. वो entity customer है, and each row represents an instance. अगर मैंने कोड के अंदर एक array बनाई हुई है, या I have for example a vector or a dictionary of customers, right? Each customer object in that dictionary or in that vector or array is an instance, right? And I'm retrieving that from a table, and I'm mapping that into the array of objects, right? So each row is essentially an instance, right, of that entity. Understand this thing very, very clearly, okay? This brings your knowledge of programming and puts it together with how databases act, right? That how do you store your objects from the program into the database, and vice versa as well, right? Or when you're trying to create your program, when you're trying to create your software, how do you create your objects? How do you create your various different things in the code, and how do you map them into the databases, right? Query tables and return data, we do. This is for the select, right? There is nothing called read. What is an index? Structure and query to look at rows in a table quickly, right? That's what it is. So anyway, that was a little bit of what you call a refresher of database and how databases work, right? But this is part of the database course that you have gone through already, and more stuff, right? But you get the idea. This is the important part, right? Very important part. Okay, we are understanding database services, understanding all this stuff. Now we are coming to how do we pick different services? Let's say starting from Azure SQL, right? What is available? मैंने आपको बताया था कि एक जो by default है, which is that you set up Azure on a VM, on a virtual machine, right? On Microsoft, they've given us this thing already, by the way. I can say I can create a virtual machine. I can create a resource, and I can say SQL Server, for example, right? SQL Server on Windows Server 2022. Yeah, Microsoft ने already image दिया हुआ है मुझे. So if we need this one, that SQL Server running on a virtual machine, let's see क्या AI search दे रहा है मुझे. Okay. You can see Microsoft has given me many different things, right? This one. यहाँ पे, is there a developer version also? Anyway, I'll keep this one, for example. Let's see, view product. So first is if I want to move from on-premises to SQL, to Azure in a lift and shift manner without modifying anything. This is the simplest way, right? I can create a virtual machine with SQL Server running. Okay. It says free SQL Server license SQL Server 2022 on developer on Windows Server 2022. Okay. And this one you should not use unless you're doing only development. Okay. They give you a free version, a free SQL Server. You are not charged for SQL. This is basically, let me see what I was going to say. Enterprise versions, developer version is basically enterprise version, but doesn't have a license to be used in production. Okay. This is SQL Server on Linux, right? This is on Ubuntu Linux, SUSE Linux, and this is the older version. And they have different versions and different things also over here, right? Different options. But we are picking the latest version, latest OS, and latest version of SQL Server. So this is a pre-built image with SQL Server installed. So we are creating the virtual machine. This is SQL Server on virtual machine. Okay. So I will say CS fast. Right. I can say VM SQL 2K 2022 fast. I don't need UAEN 0. Okay. The options, I don't want any redundancy, I don't want anything, it's fine, this is what it is. It's giving a very big, this one I will pick something small, right, I will pick something small. I want to pick just something with a 2 CPU, maybe. ये जो A होते हैं ना इसके अंदर, I think I don't know if I told you, this is for AMD. Anything that has the word A, alphabet A in the name, it means this is an AMD virtual machine with AMD CPU. Okay. Some people want to have AMD CPU, some people do not want to have, but just to let you know. Okay. Again, I can say CS admin. अच्छा अब इसने मुझे कहा है कि आपका ये it must have password must have 12 characters, okay, at least. So I'm opening up the public one and all those things. यहाँ पे ये मैंने hybrid benefits आपको बताया था, right? यहाँ पे Windows के लिए it's asking me, और ये SQL के लिए भी it can ask me if, but SQL is already free, so it's not asking me, right? लेकिन वो internally बाद में जाके I can go into SQL as well and do that, right? Yes, so I can save money. It asks for multiple confirmations and I do this one, right? ये VMs बता रहा है आपको, इसके अंदर ये बता रहा है. ये manage disk, which I told you, right, that Microsoft give you the disks which are managed and all those things, right? Not being a VM, we must have, for example, must have the network, okay? इसने admin का है, we'll put in the dev. If you remember, we did for example, MySQL also in the same subnet, right? यहाँ पे कह रहे public IP. I'm adding the public stuff. We don't usually do that, but since I'm creating a developer VM, I'm doing this thing, okay? This is nothing. Management. No need to do anything. Monitoring, I'll skip. I'll do advanced. Let me see if there's something. I don't need anything. यहाँ पे SQL Server की settings हैं. Let's see connectivity. I will say make it public, okay, over the internet. I'm okay with this one. Right now, you should not do this one basically. But anyway, it's a developer just for demonstration purposes, right? अब यहाँ पे this is a very important concept. For storage, it is saying data, it has a separate disk. For logs, it has a separate disk. And for temp, it has a separate disk. These are very critical concepts for database. Okay, understand this one. Because since it's going to write in multiple threads to data and logs and to temp DB, you want to make sure they're all on separate disks. Never ever put these three things on the same disk, ever, for any purpose. Okay. Generally, we do it for dev purposes, right? But even for anything like this, create separate disks, right? Make it a habit. But generally, for test and production, always, always, always must be three separate disks, right? And three is minimum. We can have many different disks actually, right? Multiple disks. This is again part of database theory, because the way database scales is, right, it can do write to the database files based on the number of threads, which again can be mapped to the cores. तो अगर 8 cores हैं हमारे पास, so what we can do is we can do 8 different data files actually on 8 different disks, right? So it can get max possible performance, right? कि हर thread, each thread is using its own dedicated core, and not only that, it's also writing to its own specific disk where no other process is writing. You can get true parallelism and get the max possible performance, right, with these kind of things. So please understand these things very clearly, right? ये SQL Server की कुछ और settings हैं. I'm not going to go into these ones, right? ये देखो again hybrid benefit आ गए यहाँ पे, right? यहाँ पे no हुआ हुआ है simply because this is a developer one, right? But you can do this one as well SQL Server के ऊपर. अगर हमारा non developer होता, then we could have done this one, right? Up to 43% saving. मैंने last time भी बताया था कि it was 600-700 for 2 CPU. If a VM was 800, the SQL cost was 600 per month, and you can turn it off, right, if you have an existing license, and this is only available on Azure, right? So this is how you turn off the SQL Server licensing on this one. You can enable backups. So even as a virtual machine, it is giving you a lot of services, right? It's kind of like a PaaS service, but being a VM, it can allows you to access the VM directly, right? Since it's an IaaS, but still it gives you a lot of these things to control from a PaaS control panel. But again, this is an IaaS service. It's very clear. We are creating a virtual machine. हम उसकी sizing कर रहे हैं. It just happens to be based on an image from Microsoft, which has SQL Server installed as well. I'll go into review and create. It's saying validation failed. Let me see which validation got failed. अच्छा, वो कह रहे हैं कि आप कोई पॉलिसी है, फॉर एग्जांपल वो कह रहे हैं पॉलिसी है, यू कैन नॉट हैव पब्लिक आईपीज. दिस इज द, ये मैंने पॉलिसी फ्रेमवर्क जो बनाया था. इवन दो आई कैन डू ऑल ऑफ दिस, बाय द टाइम ऑफ क्रिएशन इट सेज प्लीज रिमूव द पब्लिक आईपी. नो वैलिड, कोई मसला नहीं हुआ था किसी भी चीज को. आई विल गो ओवर हियर एंड से नन. ओके, नाउ आई विल गो बैक ओवर हियर अगेन, विल वैलिडेट. राइट, तो माइक्रोसॉफ्ट ने हमारी सब्सक्रिप्शंस के ऊपर दे हैव पुट दीज पॉलिसीज. They make sure that we are not bypassing any policies, and we cannot create, even though I have the rights, but the policy stopped me, right? And now it is happy. ये था मेरा SQL workbench. So let's see if we can try to connect. Connect to database. Let's see. Let's see if हमारा connection was okay. Yeah, VM बना रहा है. We'll wait for it, okay? And in the meantime, we'll check if we can connect to our this guy, right? I don't know इसकी setting हुई भी है सही तरह कि नहीं because of the public IP. I will check. Okay. ये MySQL का standard port है 3306, right? इसका मैंने CS admin डाला था. Let's see if it connects. तो मेरी मशीन में SQL workbench है, database is running in Azure, and if its ports are open and everything, you should be able to connect. Again, now I'll show you next time. I'll set it up properly, okay? It's not checked. Maybe port is not open. Yeah, I need to fix the connectivity in Azure. Anyway, I'll take a look at it later on. So now I've shown you Azure, Azure SQL, right? So essentially, the idea is that you want to ensure compatibility. जो भी आपकी application run हो रही है, then this is what you want to pick, right? This is how you're guaranteed, right? And you have to manage everything. OS upgrades, क्योंकि it's a what you call IaaS, तो OS आपको करना है, OS के patches, software, everything you have to take care of it, right? And you pay for the SQL virtual machine and SQL, right? Of course, depending on if you have license or not. But anyway, you pay for the virtual machine, you pay for the SQL, right? So basically, our idea is you need to, your last point is the critical part, right? When do you want to use this scenario? So when you need compatibility, right? आपका complex database है, उसकी complex configuration है, where you want to control all of that, right? Then you must have it on VM. So you have access to the SQL Server instance, you have access to the virtual machine, you can control everything. In those scenarios, you want to do this, right? इसके मैंने और भी आपको एक दो सिनेरियोज बताए थे, दो चीज़ें मैंने बताई थी. मैंने आपको बताया था कि you want to do this SQL Server on VM when the third-party software vendor can say, I don't support any PaaS service. In those cases, you must do IaaS SQL. Also, if you need to install some software where SQL Server is running, then you must use SQL Server on Azure VM, क्योंकि आपको VM की access भी मिलेगी इसके साथ, ठीक है? So please be very clear. What is the SQL Server on Azure VM? What is this? Why it is there? What's your responsibility? And when do you want to use it? Okay, we need to be very clear. These are critical part of the data services on Azure. To what to pick and under what circumstances, right? So you can see this is labeled under IaaS, and then you have these two PaaS services. So then if we want the same thing where we can accept this as a PaaS service, we want all this compatibility, but we want Microsoft to take care of all the management, but we need the whole SQL Server, every piece as it is available on the virtual machine. Then Microsoft says that we will give you something called managed instance, right? Managed instance means this is an instance of SQL Server that is managed by Microsoft. That is managed by Microsoft. So this is what it is. Okay. So again ये सारे टास्क जो हैं उसके Microsoft takes over. Backup, software patching, database monitoring, everything else. Okay. Great for migrating most on-prem databases, that is on-prem SQL Server databases, to the cloud as a PaaS service. Okay, understand this statement very clearly. Great for migrating most on-premises SQL Server databases to SQL Server on the cloud. Okay. So आपको you get everything that comes with SQL Server, but in a managed instance. In a managed way, Microsoft takes care of everything, right? So just to show you, for example, I go over here and I say create, and I say SQL managed instance. See, ये आपको मिल रहा है SQL managed instance, and we'll go over here and do this one. Right, they're giving you seems like this many hours. 720 vCore hours means 1 month basically, right? Because you have, if you look at a calculator, (24 by how much? 24 by 24 hours by 30. Yeah, 720. So that means 720 hours, 1 month of free usage they're giving you, okay? And 64 gig of storage on the SQL MI. So anyway, again, we go into CS. Manage instance name, I can say, for example, SQL CS4037 MI UAEN, okay? And again, since it is SQL Server on VM, but given to you as a PaaS service, so what it asks you is, आपको क्या चीज़ चाहिए? So it helps you pick the VM. Underneath, it is helping you pick this one. But let's see the options, right? आप कहते हो मुझे कि यहाँ पे again SQL Server licensing, right? Hybrid benefits. I confirm. First thing it verifies, right? Then it picks, okay, what kind of hardware? Standard, which is again a 1 vCore to a 4 gig RAM ratio. Premium, this is 7 gig RAM per vCore, right? This one is 1 gig RAM per vCore. And this one is, I think this is 5.1, should be 5.1 gig per RAM. And this is 13.6, basically 14 gig RAM per vCore, okay? And we can check, verify this one, right? So यहाँ पे आपको, you just select the vCores, RAM automatically comes, right? And you can see what the changing, but annual pick is something like this. Storage आपको for free, which is coming with it, is 256 by default, okay? You can add more, but I think it'll add into the cost, right? If you want like 2 terabyte or something like that. Backups you can do here. See, these are all coming from there. LRS backup, ZRS backup, GRS backup, right? GZRS backup, right? You can do all of these things, right? So again, that all that knowledge that we covered in the storage is again becoming critical over here, right? As you can see. And you can see the cost, right? It's pretty expensive. 620, 71, 4 cores, as I mentioned to you, per vCore is about $220. Then you have storage costs. They're giving you some discounts, and they're giving you the Azure hybrid benefit, right? They're giving you these vCore costs back to you as well, right? for the SQL Server licensing. They're giving this by discount to you, right? Here is the authentication, Entra only. Remember now, and this is where all that knowledge is coming together. Entra only means that accounts which are synchronized from on-premises Active Directory to Microsoft Entra ID, I want to use only that. That means my own internal enterprise accounts. Okay? SQL Server and Entra. Okay, those enterprise accounts, but accounts there is only in SQL Server as well. SQL Server accounts. For example, I can create users in SQL Server also. And last but not least, this one is use SQL, right? Which is the that use accounts which are in SQL Server, created in SQL Server only. Don't use enterprise accounts, right? We don't usually want to do this thing. We want to use this or this, but generally this, right? But you will need app accounts for applications and all that, so generally we can pick this one. I can pick an Entra admin. I can pick myself as the admin. It needs an enterprise user as the admin of this SQL Server database. Okay. I can say, for example, right, I can say this. Networking. Again, it's a managed instance. Understand that, right? So it is a VM underneath, so it must be on a VNet. I'll just finish this and we'll stop, okay, inshallah. So we can use, for example, again, same VNet that we are using for the other databases, right? No, हमने VNet. So it's not allowing us to pick this one. I will tell you why. It basically needs its own subnet, okay? So anyway, we'll use this one. So it's a new VNet, and you can use this one as well, for example. Now this is an existing VNet. These are existing VNets. So no, I think nobody else can be sitting in that one. Anyway, whatever the reason is, I don't want to go into the detail, okay? So this is the VNet, this is the subnet, okay? No need to worry about these things. Security, I will do this, start free trial, no need to worry about this, no need to worry about anything, I don't want to go into details. Review and create. So this is basically SQL Server on VM. As you can see, this will be completely managed by Microsoft, but it has all the required services for that are given when you install SQL Server. Okay? और ये मैंने बताया था previous lecture में भी कि SQL Server के साथ there are many services that come. SQL Server integration services, SQL Server agent, and various different things that come with SQL Server database engine. All those things will be available over here. That's why it has near 100% compatibility. We can take a look, for example, just to show you. And since it doesn't take 6 hours, but it can take quite a bit of time. क्योंकि VMs बनाता है, SQL Server की configuration करता है, उसकी that it does many different things, right, for you. And I can create. So I can, for example, Azure SQL VM versus MI. ये बड़ी common चीज़ है कि what is the difference, right? Just to show you. See, SQL database and Azure SQL के अंदर क्या differences हैं? I want to show you the other thing as well. This is also very nice. Especially if you are going into the data area, these are very nice things to know at a high level. What are the differences, right? मैं जो दिखाना चाह रहा हूँ ऐसी Azure SQL, not between Azure SQL. ये वाला basically comparing Azure SQL. Now this is a VM, but similar stuff, right? So you can see it's a very common topic to see the differences. क्या differences हैं in these different versions, right? And Azure SQL के अंदर तो Azure SQL is this one is very common, but important one is कि आपकी ये क्या differences हैं between this and this, and we'll go over this one. I have a separate slide deck, the final one that talks about SQL MI in detail. This is one of the most common options in database migration, right? Most common option. Anyway, we'll stop over here. And so main thing is we have covered Azure SQL, sorry, SQL Server on VMs. We have looked into the SQL MI. We'll start from over here as well, okay? Inshallah, next time in the next class. Again, we're gonna have a quiz on the topics covered so far in this thing, okay? On Monday, inshallah. Any questions, guys?